Hello, everyone. Welcome to Discussions with the Devil. I am that salty devil.
I am Mouthy Midget.
And I am, let's see.
Ape
I'm thinking
shit.
of, but since it's taken already, I was thinking of doing apey.
No, I
Because you guys
think
are all, you guys are salty, you're mouthy.
yeah, but I
You're the
think
falling ape.
ape shit. It just fits you.
Ape shitty?
No, no, that just makes you sound like a really angry ape.
I can pull that off.
Turns into an adjective.
Yeah, nah, I think we should stick with ape shit for now.
It's
Okay.
better. It's better to be a verb than an adjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So today the subject matter is going to be Comic-Con survival guide, and reason being, myself and ApeShit have secured um, our passes for what is known as DragonCon down in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was something that he and I attended for the first time last year. And I think he will agree with me when I say that I don't for what we saw or what we experienced because I had been to a few conventions that were considered, larger conventions, and I know that at least if my memory serves me correctly, he had been to more subject centric conventions where they may have been smaller, but they were more focused on a specific subject. Um, the the experience that we had, at least from my perspective, at DragonCon, I people with social anxiety and crowd like fear of crowds should never be in these situations. um, but being that we are going for a second year, I kind of wanted to do a Comic Con episode just to talk about a lot of different aspects of Comic Con, um, kind of outside what people would normally think of if they are not in the nerd realm. Because I think people looking in on Comic Con have a lot of misconceptions of it. So I wanted to just kind of do um, an episode where we talked about, our experience at conventions, our experience with, meeting celebrities or, just overall kind of our takeaway from things that are outside the everyday life. Like this is something that you do maybe once or twice a year, and it's something that is extremely memorable, just because of everything that's there. So um, to start off, apeshit, do you have any information as to when the very first Comic Con started? Because I know that as far as Comic Con goes, the two biggest ones are New York City Comic Con and San Diego. Um, but I was wondering if you had any information regarding when the first Comic Con started, because I think it was sometime in the 70s.
Actually, let's see, the first DragonCon was launched in 1987.
Well, not necessarily the first Dragon Con, like the first Comic Con in general. Um,
Oh, the first,
yeah,
ooh,
because I think that was done in the 70s, and it was a smaller scale at the time. But I think, like I said, the two main conventions that everybody talks about, maybe not goes to, but talks about are New York City Comic Con and San Diego.
yeah.
Um, and then
Uh,
you got things like Dragon Con that are splinters of, the original Comic Cons. Like you've got Dragon Con and then World, which is actually what I started going to. But as far as the origins of Comic-Con, do you have information?
Okay, in that case, I think the earliest is probably the San Diego Comic-Con. And yeah, that was March 21st, 1970.
Oh, wow. I thought it was late 70s.
No, so this will be its 49th year.
Wow. That's insane. And actually, I don't even know. It may have already happened because I think Conan O'Brien does a week-long segment where he goes to Comic-Con, and I think he's based out in California. So I think the one he goes to is San Diego. I don't know if he's done his Comic-Con episode for this year. He may have already, but I'm not sure.
Oh, actually, okay. So this year's dates for 2019, Thursday, July 18th through Sunday, July 21st. So we haven't missed it.
Okay. You act like we're going to it. I don't know if I can handle a convention that big. Holy crap.
Yeah, it is one of the bigger ones.
As far as size goes, if I remember correctly, when we went to DragonCon last year, we had asked somebody that we had met in passing, and I think the figure that they gave us was something like 80,000 people attended last year.
Yeah, I could have sworn I heard that number too. And it boggles my mind that there was that many people in that confined a space. But yeah, I that was impressive.
Well, and just to give a little perspective to anybody who doesn't know what Comic-Con is, DragonCon, I think, is kind of one in its own, in the sense that it's very different from other conventions because it's not centralized in one convention hall. It is spread out over, what was it, 5 hotels and a small convention hall.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much almost all of downtown Atlanta. And I think the largest convention I had been to prior to that was Wizard World Nashville. And when we got into Atlanta and saw the sheer size of DragonCon, I wasn't even sure I could handle it because of, just the sheer number of people that we saw outside.
Yeah. And once you actually get inside the hotels, then you have to worry about hallways and which room are you going to, and then all the lines and yeah. And of course, inside is obviously a respite from all the hot summer Atlanta air. So
yeah, when we got down there, I firmly understood why rappers call Atlanta Hotlanta. It was hot as balls down there. Like, I don't know if I've ever experienced heat like that. The only time I think I've ever been in heat that was like that, I was on a bus going from Virginia to New York, and we went through South Carolina, and on the one kind of freak day that we passed through South Carolina, it ended up being something like 100 degrees, and that they had seen that in quite a while, and that blew my mind. Like, I had never seen the weather app on my phone for any of the cities that I follow. I had never seen temperatures like that come up on my weather app, and it blew my mind. But when we actually experienced it and were in the midst of it in Atlanta, I'm thinking this year we definitely need a lot of water, because I think that we were very ill-equipped when it came to hydration.
Yeah, and I know there are water fountains located around the hotels, and again, mostly near the bathrooms. But yeah, I'm not sure if I, hydrated as much as I should have in retrospect.
Yeah.
So
as far as getting through the crowds as well, I don't think it was as many water fountains as there may have been, I don't know if they were easily accessible. Because the bottom floors, like the main floors of all the hotels, were just jam packed with people. Like it didn't matter how much they were spread out between the 5 hotels, it was still jam packed in every hotel.
Yeah, on every floor. So,
Yeah.
um,
So just to kind of let Salty jump in here, have you ever been to a Comic-Con or like a pop culture or comic convention?
Yeah, I've been to a few Comic Cons. Oh, I'm actually trying to look up something in regards to it. Um, but I'm having a little bit of difficulty. I'm not sure why.
Oh,
Um, no, I've been to Planet Comic Con there in Kansas City. Um, and there we had one. I think it was out in Manhattan, Kansas. What, not to be confused with uh New York, but ironically they call it the Little Apple.
yeah.
That's because they want to be cute.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of cool though.
yeah, but but they had a little convention up there too. I can't remember the name of it. Uh, that was pretty cool. I really liked Planet Comic Con. I got to meet Karen Gillian. I can't remember the name of the actor, but the one who played Arrow.
Stephen
Um,
Amell.
yeah, I got to meet him as well as Karen Gillian.
I kind of hate you right now. I've met Karen, but I haven't met Stephen yet, and I kind of hate you right now. Um, I love you to death, but
Um,
I kind of hate you right now.
um, yep. Let me just tell you though, they're both really tall.
Oh, I
Like,
know. Like I said, I have a picture with Karen. I actually met her when we went to DragonCon last year.
let's merge back over into our,
Yeah.
original topic. We missed our turn. Um,
Well, that's the thing when you start talking about nerd stuff, there's really no structure to it
oh yeah, I
because
know.
you can go off on tangents and still be on track with what you were talking about. Um, but it's weird for somebody like me who has what I would call social anxiety. Not necessarily that I get anxious, interacting with people, but if I'm in a large crowd, it's like my early 20s, after turning 21, I started to develop, like, I guess you'd call it crowd anxiety
Yeah.
because um, obviously being 21, I was allowed to drink, and I found myself oftentimes staying sober, even if I was in a bar with people, because drunk people who are on their feet are very unpredictable.
Yeah.
And I had to be very alert, to keep people from bumping into me or to keep from getting into or, thrown into the midst of a fight, say. Um, so I think my crowd anxiety developed, um, around then, just because it was close quarters and these bars were just jam packed with people. So when I went to my first convention in 2014, which was Wizard World Nashville, um, it was definitely a shock, because up until then it had, it was, obviously the first convention I was at, and I think it was a shock to me that it was so big at the time. Um, it was overwhelming and just something I had never experienced before. So I had to be very aware of the amount of people. Thankfully, it was very spread out. So there wasn't like hordes of people that I had to push through. It was very spread out to where I was very easily able to move around. Um, fast forward to last year, DragonCon not so much because I know that people can only tell by his avatar right now, but ApeShit is not exactly what one would call equal to Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's more Where's Waldo. So having to help me push up hills in Atlanta through a bunch of people, I'm surprised that I did not break him because it was ridiculous. Like, I was having trouble pushing myself, and to have to rely on him to push a heifer up a hill in the midst of like 200 people, I'm surprised that he survived. I give him a lot of credit, but I'm surprised that he survived.
Well, whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So,
Well,
In
if
theory.
if that's the case, I expect to see a lot more muscle on you this year.
oops.
Oops.
Working out.
Yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
you know what's funny is I actually thought about that because I realized last year that I was extremely out of shape trying to push up those hills even on my own. And I starting probably not tomorrow, but June 1st, I'm probably going to end up working out at the fitness room that our apartment complex has, just so I can be prepared for when we go, because that was like I've dealt with hills before, but that was ridiculous. Like, Atlanta is all hills, and I was definitely ill prepared.
Yeah, I did not expect that. The hills.
I feel as though like we went from nerd territory to unusual detail
Well,
territory.
to be fair, to be fair, this is kind of a Comic-Con survival guide for
Okay.
anybody.
That's fair.
So,
Okay.
it's going to cover a wide range of things surrounding Comic-Con, just in hopes of helping people who maybe, even whether it's their first Comic-Con or their first large Comic-Con, it helps them adequately prepare. Because, like I said, as far as my memory goes, based on conversations that ApeShit and I had last year, up until DragonCon, he had only been to smaller conventions that were more subject centric.
Okay.
So they were very limited in their subject matter, whereas you get a wide range of all fandoms at something like DragonCon. So obviously it's going to be a lot bigger.
Okay.
So whether it's your first convention or whether it's your first large convention, I think there's a lot of things that you need to be aware of, depending on your ability to interact with crowds.
Yes. I actually have one for you guys. Okay.
Ah.
All right. If you're planning on cosplaying, whether you make your outfit or whatever,
Mhm.
make sure it is absolutely evident that if you have any props, that they look like props. Because carrying something like this, which is, an actual knife, probably not a good idea in a public
Yeah.
place. So just word of advice, even if you have like a fake gun, and just paint a little bit of orange on there so they know that you're not there to kill anybody, you're just trying to play the part.
Funny that you mentioned that, and ApeShit, I'll let you talk, or I'll let you talk in a second. I just don't want to forget this. My buddy Rob and I went to Wizard World Nashville again in 2016, and I remember that they were saying And actually, I think we even heard it when you and I went to DragonCon last year. They were saying that they were cracking down on the style of weapons that people carried around, um, because of issues that they had previously. Um, and like you said, with anything that looks like a firearm, you're going to want to make sure that people know that it's fake, so you don't get tackled by security or anything.
Yep.
Um,
Which sometimes, ironically, is actually in a cosplay outfit.
yeah, um, it's it like there. I remember my first time going in 2014. There were people cosplaying as cops, and I couldn't tell if they were real cops or if they were cosplay cops. So like I said, depending on what kind of convention you go to, you really have to be aware of who is in uniform and who is in cosplay, if I can put it that way and have it be understood. um, it's very hard to tell, especially with hundreds of fandoms mixed together, because you don't know. I mean, I can honestly say that there are only a few fandoms that I'm familiar with. The rest of them I hear bits and pieces about, but I don't fully understand them. So it's like when I see them in person, I have to wonder, okay, is that a person in uniform or is it a person in cosplay? And you really have to know you have to know your area to be able to make that distinction.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Um, Apeshit, do you have anything that you want to add into this?
Uh, I know for my part, if I am cosplaying down in Atlanta, Georgia, I plan on uh, dressing appropriately for the heat.
Yeah.
And this is my own personal preference. But yeah, I try to pick characters who either wear short sleeves or roll their sleeves up, etc. But I've also seen these huge elaborate costumes of like Optimus Prime or I don't know, like a troll or orc or something, with a lot of latex prosthetics and that sort of thing. Um, and honestly, more power to you because it looks freaking awesome. But do be sure you hydrate because you're going to get quite warm down there,
Yeah.
Yes.
especially if you go outside. Indoors, it's
Well,
temperature controlled pretty well. But
yes, but I will say that the level of excitement you may have may kind of counteract whatever you know
Yeah,
climate control you have
yeah,
inside the building.
the
So
more the
good
more
point.
the more excited you get, the more I think your body temperature goes up. I think that's what you're saying.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, especially with that number of people in one area, the body heat alone is going to make the temperature go up.
yeah,
So that's another reason to stay hydrated. Um, and anybody in the nerd community that's watching this already knows this, but as far as conventions this year go, um, I have a feeling, regardless of whether it's Atlanta or up here in Virginia, um, we're going to see a lot of cosplayers who um, decide to dress up like Chewbacca
okay,
Mm.
because of the death of Peter Mayhew, just to pay tribute to him. Um, I really, based on our experience in Atlanta, I really fear for anybody who decides to dress up like Chewbacca, because that heat is no joke. Like I said, I didn't even dress up, and it was still affecting me. Like I had to make sure that my body temperature was regulated.
yeah, yep. It's a very exciting time. A lot of cool merch. A lot of people dress up. Um, get some meet and greets in there. it's generally a good time. Sometimes they even have contests.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, there is just so much going on, and like you were saying earlier, like with the crowds. I don't do crowds either. They freak me out for a number of reasons. One, I've deployed, so crowds really stress me out. Um, but um, there are just so much to do that you usually like if you go you want to go more than one day because you're not going to be able to get it done in one day.
Yeah.
You're going to go in there, you're going to see everything, but your head is going to be spinning. You might do like half the things you want to do.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and
Um,
I hate to say it, you're not going to do everything in 5 days, for what it's worth.
no, not
no,
really.
and
So
actually, that was one of the things I wanted to jump into because that was a discussion that you and I were having individually. Um, as far as going back to Atlanta this year, um, we went not really knowing what to expect because neither of us had ever been there. Um, but the one thing that you said to me when we were leaving last year, and you recently said to me when we were getting our passes for this year, was that you wanted to um, manage time a little bit better to go to different panels. Um, and that was one of the things because I don't really, I mean, I do some of the panels if they really spark my interest, but I'm not really a panel kind of guy.
Yeah.
But as far or ape shit, as far as your interest in the panels that they had last year, what would you say, with your experience from last year, what would you say is a good rule of thumb if you're going to a convention that is, whether it's 3 or 5 days, depending on how many panels they have, obviously you're not going to get to all of them. But what are some tips that you may have for anybody wanting to catch as many panels as possible? Like, what do they have to decide what they want to give up in lieu of those panels? Or do you think that they can manage their time to see, several things at once?
yeah, it depends. First off, I would say check the schedule, um, and everything is set according to interest and
Mhm.
category. So they had like a lot of science, a lot of DIY and maker type panels. Um, science fiction and story. Yeah, like fantasy based panels. Like, oh, what's the history of Inuyasha, or something like that, or like the mythology of Japanese manga or anime, that sort of thing. Um, so I would make sure you know what you're interested in. Check the schedule to see what there is, when it is, and if there are any double panels. Like if they have a panel on Friday night for using prosthetics on your face, and you're like, oh, but they have the panel on uh, spirituality and Ghostbusters, or something like that at the same time,
Yeah.
and you wanted to see that, but they happen to have another prosthetics panel on Sunday afternoon, say, then you can forego that one, see the other one on spirituality, say, and then see the prosthetics on Sunday. So you really have to use your own discretion. Um, and there will be times when you have to sacrifice uh, a panel because again, you can only fit so much in a certain amount of time,
Mhm.
and then also you have to eat. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh, so there may be times when you have to. The take home is that you have to pick and choose. But if you can minimize loss by planning ahead, and I
Yeah.
think that's the take home.
Um, I don't know if it has anything to do with, the size of Dragon Con, but I don't think other conventions I had been to had a specific area set aside where you can go up and get food or drinks, because they actually had what they call a con suite where, like, literally it was catered and had like oh, more food than you can probably imagine in this small little area. And if you're going to Comic Con on a budget, I would find conventions that have con suites where they offer food. Um, just make sure they have the amenities that are going to be necessary um, when, as far as making sure that your overall health is not going to be compromised. Because I don't know if ApeShit experienced this after DragonCon, but there is something in the convention community known as con crud, and I know that I've gotten my ass kicked by con crud. You are surrounded by so many people that you don't know, from one area to the next who's sick and who isn't, because people, when they go to conventions, they don't necessarily take their own health into consideration. And if they're sick, whether they know it or not, they may, transmit something through the air. And if you are at a 5-day convention and all of a sudden, you're leaving and con crud hits you, there are times where I've had friends that have been down for at least a week after a convention because of all of the germs that they were exposed to.
Oof. Yeah, that's a valid point. I lucked out last year. I didn't feel any ill effects from the con at all. And I'm crossing my fingers it happens the same way this year. But yeah, I would recommend stay hydrated. Get your fruit and vegetables as often as you can. And if someone's coughing or sneezing a lot, maybe keep a 5-foot radius if at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then wash your hands before you eat. Doorknobs, railings, everything is a vector for that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and make sure that you have a budget, and you stick to your budget, because Apeshit and I were talking yesterday, and I had told him that I really need to be careful about where we eat this coming year or this coming summer, um, because I'm still paying off my credit card from last year, and my bank account doesn't like me right now. Um,
oof.
but we
Yeah.
we we definitely, um, when especially with the big areas like Atlanta. Atlanta is known to be a tourist trap in general, so
Hmm.
they jack up their prices for tourists. But when something like Comic-Con comes into town, they know damn well they're going to get tourists up the yin yang. Um, so I don't know if they curtail their prices according to that, but I know that it wasn't exactly cheap to eat out. Even there was a restaurant inside one of the hotels that we ate at. I love the food, but I didn't like the bill.
Yeah.
The bill was a little bit of a bitch.
Yeah, and I think that's true anywhere. When there is something going on in any given city, they will upcharge everything in the vicinity. Your restaurants, your hotel rooms. Again, any touristy site will up the price for everything. So be aware of that, budget for it, um, and if you can get away on the cheap, take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Yep. It's kind of like
Um. Yeah. Go ahead.
okay. No, basically like by all means, if you want to go to a convention, go have fun and everything, but it's only going to benefit you if you do a reconnaissance for yourself. Um, so like before you go, find out schedules, find out where everything's going to be located that you're going to want. When you get there, if you're going to spend more than one day there, spend a good majority of the first day just basically figuring out the lay of the land, because notoriously they tend to change their setup.
um, you actually bring up a good point. As far as reconnaissance and knowing what you want to do. Um, being your military background, how important do you think planning is and knowing your environment when it comes to I mean any situation in general, but an area that is largely concentrated with people.
Uh, but what you were saying about reconnaissance and knowing the lay of the land, yeah, Mouthy and I took like what, a day and a half in order to get the layout of where all the hotels, the street names, the parking lots. We
One of
we
the
got
things
disoriented early on.
Yeah, one of the things that I think helped us that I had never actually seen at another convention, um, they actually had a panel for people who had never been to DragonCon before, like it was their first time. They specifically had a panel where they took groups of people that had never been to DragonCon and they took them to every spot that was designated for the convention and showed them, what they needed to know, what they needed to avoid. Um, I think overall it helped us because it was kind of a memory reflex
Okay.
when we were overwhelmed, trying to remember where things were. I think it ended up being a memory reflex. Oh wait, they told us in the introduction seminar that we could go here for this or we could go there for that. So I mean, whether it's a big convention or a small convention, I think for people who've never been to one, I think those are absolutely key because especially me being in the chair, knowing how to maneuver and navigate certain situations was extremely helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. One, not only do you have a better understanding of what's going on, where things are, and basically where you're at, um, what you can do. Um, it also greatly impacts your level of fun because you're not spending your whole time just trying to figure out where everything is.
Yeah.
Um, which is why, like I say, I was saying before, like you'd go if you're gonna go for multiple days, take the first day, or in your guys' case, a day and a half, and just kind of like do just check out everything, see what's available. If they got maps, get one,
Mhm.
um, and all that stuff, and then come back the next day. You got a better understanding of what things were, and then you can focus on the things you want to focus on.
Yeah.
Because like we've kind of tried it both ways. Where I've gone a couple times. I think we went over a whole weekend. First day there was like no planning whatsoever, and I was pretty much heated the whole time. Um, Second day we had a better understanding of what was going on and had a blast. So
I
That's
think
awesome.
for our part, I think, and apeshit, you can back me up on this if I'm right as far as your frame of mind. Um, Not knowing what we were getting ourselves into, having never been to DragonCon, um, I think the fact that when we got there, because they said that it went for something like I think it was August 30th to um, September 2nd or September 3rd. And when we got there, we thought that, the convention and everything was going to start on August 30th. But it turned out that, there were some select things that were happening on August 30th, but the real convention didn't start until the day after. And I think that preparation time for that first day, even though it wasn't the official first day of the convention, I think that it was very helpful to anybody who was overwhelmed by what they saw and not having been to it before. um, I do think that a day of planning is necessary. Like we actually got there a day before. I think we got there August 29th, so we had August 29th to settle in, but then we had August 30th to really kind of get our footing and know the lay of the land for the convention. And then the convention really didn't start until, the day, the 31st. So I think we had, even though it wasn't planned, I think we got lucky as far as being able to become comfortable in that setting, knowing what we needed to do.
Yeah. And to kind of like add to what you guys have already put in, it's good practice because like you and me, well, we don't do crowds. They stress us out and everything. Get to a point where no matter where you're at in the convention, you you have a way to get out of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm.
just kind of you got to think about it strategically. I'm not don't make the whole thing serious.
Right.
Have fun, but like just keep those things in the back of your mind so that way you don't get to a point where you're stressed and you can't get out of it. Be like, oh, I want to prevent this from happening so I can keep enjoying my time. You know.
And I think ApeShit knows where this is going to segue into. As far as being overwhelmed, I like I said, I keep saying, make sure that you know the lay of the land of what you're dealing with. And as far as me having crowd anxiety, make sure that you have I don't want to say your emotions in check because I think that's the wrong word, but make sure that you know how to manage your anxiety so that if you become anxious, it doesn't come off as you being a raging dickwad to anybody that's with you. Um, because, like I said, he and I had never been to a convention that was that large. So, as much as we tried to stick together, there were things that we wanted to do separately. And with me not being familiar with the area or familiar with anybody in that area, it was very overwhelming for me. So I did get a little bit, I don't want to say heated, but I did get a little bit anxious when trying to contact him a few times. And, with all of the people around or all of the noise, he wasn't always aware that his cell phone was going off. So it would be, a lapse in time before he got back in touch with me. And like it was never that I was mad at him for not answering. It was just my anxiety at a level that I was not used to.
Yeah.
And like I've told him several times since last year that it was never me trying to be mean to him or nasty. It was literally my anxiety manifesting into something that I didn't recognize because of not being in a familiar setting. So I think having good communication and having good communication resources with whoever you're with is absolutely key, especially with the larger conventions.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because I wanted to segue into that somehow, and I think that is perfect. Um, so you mentioned walkie-talkies,
Yes.
and
A friend of mine who was going to go with us, who had to unfortunately bow out, has told me that he's going to get a pair of two-way radios that he wants anyway, but he said that if he gets his hands on them, he's gonna let us use them for Atlanta, which I think is going to be a lot more effective than trying to listen for our cell phones to ring. Because I mean, in crowds of that size, you don't generally hear, your message tone or your ringtone because there's so much chatter going on
Yeah.
that all you can basically hear is what I would equate to like white noise. Like it's just
Mm,
static almost.
Yep.
yeah, and I mean, if you either forget to bring walkie-talkies or can't afford any, um, I guess remember to check your cell phone maybe every half an hour, say,
Yeah.
and charge it every day
Yeah.
so that you're on like every day you start on like 100% full battery. And there was an issue with Wi-Fi last year. like I'm not sure because I couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi of the hotels. So my phone was continually trying to connect to the Wi-Fi, and it couldn't connect, and it was draining the battery. Always searching for that Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So I would almost recommend, if you cannot get a good Wi-Fi signal, just forget it. Suck it up. Use the data, and that'll keep your battery from being completely depleted by late afternoon.
I don't.
So
For me personally, I don't recall having an issue with the Wi-Fi. I don't even recall if I ever used it. Just because I know that I have unlimited data, but I know that once it gets to a certain a certain gigabyte, I think it slows down. But I don't know. I don't recall if I ever used the Wi-Fi within the hotels, because I think the Wi-Fi password changed depending on what hotel you were in, because they were different entities.
yeah, so it was just a big headache.
Yeah.
Trying to use the Wi-Fi. So I would almost just forego it for the con and
Yeah.
use your data. So
There are two sort of subjects I want to cover. Just, that, I mean, I don't know if you want to end soon, but there are two subjects that I can think that I want to cover, unless you guys have any other things that you think would be beneficial to the overall conversation.
yeah, actually I do.
Okay.
I guess it's mostly logistics, and actually this might harken back to reconnaissance.
Mhm.
But okay, so make sure you're familiar with the layout of the city of Atlanta, or whatever city you're going to for
Yeah.
whatever con, because I was driving into Atlanta and we lucked out. We actually always did like an early morning commute, I guess, if I can call that, into the city. And honestly, the traffic was not bad.
The traffic, and honestly, at the time we were staying with friends of mine,
Yeah,
and they said that you need to get into Atlanta at such and such a time to beat the traffic. We legitimately, except for one night,
yeah,
coming back from the convention, we never had um, traffic issues. I know that that one night that I'm referencing, I ended up falling asleep in the car because we were at a backup for about an
yeah,
for about an hour, like 90 minutes, I think it was. And I
yeah,
ended up falling asleep in the car, and I felt bad, but like my body just shut the fuck down.
yeah. That's
um,
fair.
but yeah, like it was weird because the friends that we stayed with were an hour outside of Atlanta. They were like out in the country. So, that was another hurdle that we had to contend with, not being familiar with the area. We had to make sure that we had our travel, really figured out. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's definitely, you know, as far as, knowing the town that you're in, um, on top of knowing the layout of the convention is very, very key.
yeah. And with that said, um, the locals are very helpful for money.
Yeah,
So,
the locals are, yeah, they like when tourists come into the area. And if anybody is not familiar with what we are talking about when we say locals, because I actually didn't hear them referred to this until I moved, down here to the south. When we refer to locals, we are talking about homeless people.
oh yeah,
And uh, it was quite an experience. Like living here in Virginia, I'm used to locals because we see them all over. And I kind of know now, almost living here 6 years, to avoid them, or to really know what sort of answers to give them. Um, ApeShit, however, I don't know if they have a high concentration of locals in his area. It was quite the experience for him. And I think I'll let him explain that, just because now we can laugh at it. But back when we were in the midst of it, I think it was an extremely stressful situation for him.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, I don't just ask for help willy-nilly, unless I really need it. But the people would actually come up to me, and just kind of assert themselves, like, "Oh, here, don't park here, park over here. I'll hold the spot for you." And that was the first incident. And then I had to make sure I had cash in my wallet to give them. I only gave them like $2, but it's something I didn't prepare for, because I usually use credit. So I would almost, if you're able to handle yourself on your own, just maybe politely decline any offers of, like, well, there's another time where they were guiding us to the crosswalk, and I'm like, I already know where the crosswalk is.
Yeah.
Something like that, or like taking a picture, that sort of thing. When you can do it yourself, they kind of, butt in and take charge, and I'm like, well, thank you, but it's just us. We got this handled, that sort of thing.
They kind of know how to work us better than we know how to work them. And I think that,
Yeah.
it's all a matter of turning the tables on the people who know how to manipulate you. Not that we want to be manipulative, but we want to make sure that we're not the ones being manipulated either.
Right. So this year I'm going to be less naive.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
because I already know a couple things.
I think we should go a little bit more in depth as to what you're referring to. There was an incident where it was actually during my time where I was waiting for the photo op that I had with Karen Gillan, and I get a text from ApeShit saying I don't have my tag, meaning, my admission pass. And I'm like, wait a second, you have the same hard plastic hard plastic holder that I have. How did that happen? And he goes, I don't know. I think it got lifted. And I'm thinking to myself, that sucks, because he basically got Oliver twisted. Somebody went up next to him, and without him even knowing, thumbed the hard plastic case and lifted his pass out of it, and he no longer had a pass to get back into the convention. And it was like, I don't think I've ever seen you stressed out, but like the look of just fear and pissed offedness in your eyes, I don't think I've ever seen that in you before.
Yeah. Honestly, and I hope this doesn't happen to anyone during the con, but apparently it does happen. But yeah, it actually happened on the second day of the con. And
Was it the second day, really?
yeah. So and I'm not sure if if I was running back to the car and with my badge kind of flopping around, like inverted it, went upside down and it fell out, or if I was indeed, thumbed and it was, lifted off of me. But yeah, when I saw the plastic case empty, my heart, jumped like double speed. And I was like retracing my steps back and forth a couple of times before I even went back to you. And during that evening, they started checking badges to make sure, you either had your room ticket or a badge into the convention. And from that point on, I was up shit creek. I reported it to the Lost and Found, and gave my name, the badge name that it was under was yours at the time, and I'm like, what are the odds of someone finding it and returning it? And They were honest. They said very unlikely. So the next day was Saturday, and luckily they had an outdoor parade, which I could attend and took pictures and that sort of thing. But all the rest of the day, I couldn't do it. And I
Yeah.
guess for our part, it was our day of rest, kind of. So you were back at the house, kind of sleeping and catching up on that sort of thing. And I couldn't do much else, so I did the same thing. And then Sunday, I ended up getting a day pass and being done with it. And like, okay, I'll just suck it up, pay the 45 for the day pass and be done with it. But yeah, you become the pariah once you lose your badge. So my advice is make sure the badge itself is connected, fastened physically to either your person, or in this case, we had a plastic sheath for our badges. So after getting home from the con, I actually drilled in 2 holes of my plastic envelope to be like, okay, so once I get my badge this year, I am going to, I don't know, either find like a twist tie or a freaking pipe cleaner, or hell, even a paper clip that I can just bend and fasten it to the plastic case itself, because I do not want that to happen again. And I guess for my part, make sure you check your badge every 5, 10, 15 minutes. Make sure you can touch it, see it, make sure it's in front of you, either on your belt or around your neck on your lanyard, because it kind of, it sucked. I'll just outright say it.
Yep.
Because you spent quite a good bit of money on this badge, and now what do? You have no proof that you paid for it.
Oh, that's right. I was the one that bought the passes for both of us, wasn't I? I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, and so for the remainder of the con, I felt a little uneasy, a little stressed, and I didn't feel welcome.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this year goes a little differently, or
I
a lot differently.
I
But
think what frustrated me the most when dealing with, with witnessing your situation, because it wasn't what I was dealing with, it was what you were dealing with, but being a witness to that situation from an outsider's perspective, I think what frustrated me the most for you was the fact that there were, I think 2 times where security had actually gotten a hold of you and made you think that they had found your pass, but it wasn't your pass or something like that.
yes, and I think that was a logistical error on their part. They put my name on the wrong list, saying my badge was found. And so then I got really excited, and I'm like, "Oh my god, how rare is this?"
Yeah.
So I had to actually speak with the hotel security to be like, "Okay, I got a message. Someone had found my badge. Um, can I go check and see and make sure I can get it, or whatever?" And they didn't trust me. They're like, "Okay, but the next time I see you, you'd better have your badge." And I'm like, okay, thank you. And yeah, it felt really weird. And I'm almost tempted to start a panel of my own of like, just,
Yeah.
if you lost your badge, here's, a lost your badge anonymous group,
Yeah.
just to cope with the freaking trauma of it. But
Yeah. That's another like reconnaissance thing, making sure that you really know, what you have to have with you, and how important it is. And like I said, ApeShit has said, he was extremely naive. I don't. I think we both went into it with a sense of naivete. Um, but I think that it's just a learning experience, and as disappointing as it was to lose it, I think that as long as you have the wherewithal to learn from it and kind of plan accordingly for the next time.
Mhm.
I think it's good, because I think you should experience things like that. I mean, as bad as that sounds, just so you're not, doing something without realizing that everything you do does have consequences, or everything you don't do does have consequences.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
I recommend that, next time we just solo the badges into our skin. It'd be good. Well, because then,
yeah,
then if somebody lifts it, you can definitely feel it. So,
yeah, and
Problem solved.
I know that if they try to lift my ass, they ain't lifting anything. Um, but I think the last part, at least for me, that I want to go into is, I think it's very common, for anybody in the convention scene to know that, um, you know, more often than not, you're going to these conventions to meet specific people from different shows, whether they are the stars of the show or whether they're the creators of the show.
mhm.
Um, and I think that, um, I want to get your perspectives on, people that you've met, people that have been at conventions that you haven't met that you wanted to. Um, it, just to kind of give a little context, um, I think DragonCon for me, like there were more, like they literally had a separate room for what they called the Walk of Fame. They had probably 60 or 70 guests that came to this convention. Um, and it was unreal. I think ApeShit, you ended up being able to go into the Walk of Fame with me, right?
Yeah. I think was that Sunday? That must have been one of the.
Well, I know that I went in, after because um, I had two photo ops, one with Karen Gillan and one with two of the girls from a show up in Canada called Lost Girl. And I know after both of those, I ended up going to the Walk of Fame to see what other celebrities were there. And I think also we need to touch on the fact that you need to budget your money correctly,
Yeah.
because I know
Yeah.
that, you don't really know until the day of the convention what celebrities are going to charge for, um, dealing with apartment issues. Um, okay, back to what I was saying. What was I saying?
Yes.
Uh.
Oh, budgeting.
Yeah.
Um, I know that for me, like I said, my credit card still doesn't, like me right now because of all the money I ended up spending. Um, but as far as what I remember, um, with you, ApeShit, was the fact that, um, we ended up walking around the Walk of Fame, um, and just looked at the prices for different things like signatures and, photo ops and or photos within the Walk of Fame. And I understand that some celebrities are more, um, in demand than others, but the sheer prices that some of these celebrities charge, especially when they're has-beens, like they haven't really done anything of value in years, it blows my mind, um, how much they choose to charge.
Yeah. I I I'm a cheapskate, so I never paid for uh autographs or pictures. But I did shake hands of a couple people. Let's see, they had the Hulk from like the 1980s.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know you.
yeah, Lou Ferrigno.
I forgot
Uh,
you ended up talking to him.
yeah. Let's see, they had Felicia Day. The voice of Big Bird and Oscar. Um, oh God.
Where was I when that happened? I didn't know you did that. Like I think I knew about Ferrigno and Felicia Day, but I didn't
You
know
might have
about
been.
the.
Yeah, you might have been out taking pictures, like actual at the photo ops.
Oh
Um,
wow.
So I think this was the time when we like had split up for a time, and then we were gonna meet back up afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, during that time they had quite a few people in the the Walk of Fame,
Yeah.
and so I highly recommend that just as a highlight of the con, because if you are on a budget, you can stand in line and literally shake hands and talk to someone you've seen on TV in the movies, um, and just say, thank you. You do amazing work. I love watching you. Whatever. And they're there to listen and chat. Um, and if you happen to get a picture or an autograph, so be it. But it's nice to have that option when you're on a budget.
Yeah. And I think what is worth mentioning is, and I think it's important to do this. Conventions try to make it appear like it is more structured than it is, as far as meeting the celebrities. But one of the cool things is oftentimes the celebrities are far more laid back and relaxed than the convention would like you to think, which I know is probably just a protection. They want to try and make sure that the celebrities are not taken advantage of, with their time and stuff. But um, just the sheer conversations I was able to have with some of these people, it blew me away. And one of the reasons I wanted to touch on this was, um, there's that old saying, never meet your heroes, which to a certain extent I can understand, um, because somebody can be one way on screen and be very, very different in person. I think for my part, I've gotten lucky with the people I've met. Um, so I've never had an issue. A friend of mine I was talking to recently, we got into that discussion about not meeting your heroes, because um, everyone you meet, whether they want you to believe it or not, is just a gigantic asshole. Um, and I feel like I've gotten lucky with the people I've ended up meeting and having conversations with. Um, but I know that when I went to Nashville in 2014, um, who was there? Oh, Shatner was there, and
Oh, ah,
this was before um, Nimoy had died. Because
oh,
I think Nimoy had died. No, wait, was it? I'm not entirely sure when Nimoy died. Um, but I think that Shatner was there in 2014. He wasn't there in 2016 because it was in the Nashville convention. Um, when he was there in 2014, Nimoy was with him, and they like literally to go up and get a photo op with him and an autograph was something like $400 just for him. And it's like, I'm sorry, Shatner, as iconic as people see you, it's like I would never pay that. If it was for Shatner and Nimoy, maybe, but I mean, I'm more of a next generation, rather than a, original Star Trek. But it's like I don't know where some of these celebrities get off charging what they do. But then, you have, you know, people like Ferrigno who are, I would say, more iconic than Shatner. And, he will sit there and have a 20-minute conversation with you. I mean, as long as there aren't people in his line, but he'll sit there and just kind of shoot the breeze with you, just because I think for him, it breaks up the monotony of, not doing something.
Mhm.
And it, like I understand the sentiment of um not meeting your celebrities because you might be disappointed, but as long as you go in realizing that they're people just like you, I think your expectations are a little bit more realistic.
yeah.
um Go ahead.
And I think that is truer than we let on. That all these celebrities are also just people.
Yeah.
For better or worse. They can be, assholes, but
Mhm.
also they could also be really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for instance, let's see. Last year I met. Okay, let me make sure I got all these names right. Let's see. Okay, so Deshaun Lockman. She played in Dollhouse and Altered Carbon that I know her from. And oh my gosh, she was so freaking down to earth and
Yeah.
pleasant and nice. And yeah, she was amazing to talk to. And then I also met Dominique Tipper and Frankie Adams from The Expanse. And okay, so in the show, they play these like really like hard ass, like military type women. But then when I met them at their table, they're like nice and cordial and like completely different from the characters. And it was just interesting to see that contrast. And then of course, Lou Ferrigno, played the Hulk, and he was articulate and pleasant and nice. And so
Yeah.
it's incredible that as long as fame doesn't go to their heads, these people are freaking like real people. And I would say uh, a joy to meet
Yeah.
if you meet someone like that. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um,
Salty's like, okay, I don't.
sorry.
no, that's okay. No, unless we have other points to make, I think we should do a highlights, or basically
um,
like things to remember, and then we can kind of
well,
close it
one of
out.
the last, yeah, one of the things I just want to cover just before we close out. Um, I mean, I've talked. I mean, I just talked about how I feel like there are some celebrities who tend to exploit their fans because they know that they're in demand, and like ApeShit just said, they a lot of people tend to let fame go to their head. One of the things that I learned at the first convention that I went to in 2014 um, was that I think the fans tend to exploit the celebrities just as much. And um, I had a meet and greet with Jason Frank, who played the original Green Ranger from Mighty Morphin in the 1990s. And during the meet and greet, he was telling a story about how somebody had come up to him at another convention and they had him sign, like, I think 15 different things. But he's one of the people, you know, as much as I say, they're all, just as human as the rest of us, he is, I think, a little too easygoing for being as in demand as he is. I think he needs to be a little bit more rigid because he's very much a pushover and very much agreeable to a lot of things.
Mm.
This one fan had him sign like 15 different things, and it was under the guise of he told Jason that they were going to use it for a fundraiser. They were going to auction things off, and Jason, being the big heart that he is, signed all of these things. And um he didn't know it at the time, but he got smart to it and started searching his own name, like on Amazon and eBay and all of those different sites where people sell stuff like that. And he realized that this person that he had met at a previous convention ended up taking all of these items and just selling them for money.
Yeah.
So after hearing that story, it's like I understand. I don't understand why people value material things, and I know we've covered this in other episodes where I hate materialism, but I think this goes to show just how disgusting materialism is, in the sense that you know you may think that something that you're getting signed by somebody you consider a hero is sentimental to you, but the first time that you're hard up for money, you're going to realize that that's worth money and you're going to sell it.
Mm.
So I've made it, a rule of mine that I get photos with celebrities and I'll have discussions with celebrities, but I won't ask them to sign anything because I feel like it's exploiting them just as much as I feel some celebrities exploit their fans. And it's like, if you really value the impact that this person has had on your life, you're not going to exploit them in that way. So I think that fans as well as celebrities need to be a little bit more self-aware as to their intentions for being at conventions,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like the more you alienate a fan, or the more a fan alienates a celebrity, it's going to end up where they're less and less inclined to want to show up to these events. And I
Mm.
think that it doesn't have, I think it has a larger impact on, um, the crowds that come to see these people. Um, or, in the case of a fan, I think it kind of puts into their head, this image of, oh, these conventions are just exploitative and they're not really worth my time. Um, so I think that, we need to be a little bit more mindful of our intentions, um, of going to conventions. And I think that equally, I think celebrities need to be aware of their role in being there, because I do believe that each of, fans and celebrities have different responsibilities, um, for attending conventions. I think that they need to just recognize their responsibilities.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Just because, like I said, it hurt my heart to hear that story that Jason told, that somebody exploited him to that degree. And it's not even the fact that I have a high level of respect for him. It's in general, like anybody that has had an impact on me. It's like, I'm not going to sit there and exploit you, because I know that I've been exploited by people, not even celebrities, and I know how it feels
Mm-hmm.
from a human perspective. And that's something I would never want done to me.
Yep. Yep.
So
It's for that reason. I have trust issues.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
I'm going to let you guys kind of close it out, because, again, I've talked too much, but I want to hear closing thoughts from you guys.
okay. Well, the whole intention of this episode was basically to kind of like do like a survival guide for conventions, things to highlight, things to remember. I guess be
Be mindful of your health, and be mindful of your role in, crowd, in settings like this. Just kind of be aware, be self-aware.
yep.
Yeah. Know your surroundings. Know what's in your wallet, what's on your person, and check it on occasion. Make
Yeah.
sure
Yep.
you didn't lose that freaking bed. Um, and then also, I'd say, you know, have fun, but also be careful
Yeah.
Yep.
and trust no one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think, especially in the nerd community, I think it's important to look at these. If you look at conventions like a gigantic family reunion, I think you're more apt to, whether it's a fellow convention goer or it's a celebrity that you're meeting. I think you're more apt to be of the mindset to treat them like you would want to be treated as a family member. So if you look at, I've always looked at these as, giant family or family reunions. So I go into it, being willing to treat, a fellow convention goer or a celebrity the same way I would want to be treated by a family member, even if I don't know them, because, we're all there for the same purpose. And I think that collectively we all are, have a responsibility to be there for each other.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a good bit of good advice for personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And I think I think kind of like last point to make, because I think those other ones were probably the most vital. Um, in regards to cosplaying and cosplayers, have fun, be smart, but at the same time,
Don't
um,
be a dick.
don't be a dick. Get they may be, dressed up. That does not mean you can touch them.
Exactly.
Yeah, yep.
They have the conventions that I've been to, they all have signs. Cosplay is not consent, and I love those signs, just because I've seen cosplayers get taken advantage of in that way, and it's disgusting.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the sad part is, like, you may see this amazing robot costume, but again, no one uses real metal for cosplay, at least usually. It's usually like some sort of foam uh, or yeah, the prosthetics, but
Mhm.
that material may not be strong enough for maybe like a gentle touch accidentally, but if you bend it or break it or something, it's that it's gone. Like they have to find a way to repair it, and they may not have the means to repair that at the con.
Yeah.
So just
Um, and I think, especially for the type of person that goes to a convention, they don't have the resources outside of a convention to express themselves. So this is their way of expressing themselves. So I think that there needs to be a great deal of respect for how they express themselves, because I think that everyone's doing that in their own way. If whether you are male or female and you're going up to a cosplayer and they happen to be maybe what general society would consider scantily clad,
hmm,
don't treat them like you're in a gentleman's club, because they're not there for that purpose. It's just their way and their interpretation of how they want to express themselves.
yeah,
And in a convention setting, I think that there is more acceptance with how you want to express yourself.
yeah,
Yeah, to finally end things, because I'm guessing we could probably go on forever. Um,
yeah.
I do want to thank everybody for listening, watching, whichever medium you're hearing us or watching us on. Um, if you are going to conventions, let us know. Like I said, you can find myself and ApeShit in Atlanta at the end of August for DragonCon. Um, you know, Tell us your stories, in the comments. We want to hear, good, the bad, the ugly, um, kind of what your intentions for going to certain conventions are,
Hmm.
and just kind of join in the conversation and let us know, what the nerd world experience does for you, because I think it has the ability to change lives for everybody in, various ways.
Yeah,
So I'm curious to know, with our viewers or, with the listeners, how it, impacts their life.
yep. If you guys got stories to tell, feel free to share them with us. I mean, there's plenty of space in the comments, so by all means, we love a good story,
Yeah.
especially when
Um,
it's something we like.
yeah. I think that regardless of what fandom you're part of, I think you can relate a lot to anything that a fellow convention goer, says, like anything they talk about, because there are so many fandoms mixed in that they could be talking about their own fandom, but they can be talking about a subject matter that you relate to.
Hmm.
And that's the best thing about the fandoms. They're not these high school cliques. They are, every fandom has, kind of foundational subjects that you can all relate to. And I think that is the crux of conventions, is depending on what fandom you are representing, you all can relate on some level to a centralized, theme.
Or hell, the passion of
Yeah,
something.
exactly. And that's what I mean. Because you all are there essentially for the same reason, but that same reason just manifests differently depending on what fandom you're there representing or, looking to explore.
Yeah. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah. I think everyone should go to a convention at least once in their life.
Hear, hear.
So thank you, everybody.
Later, guys.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.
You too.